Dave.
Liam.
It's a trailer.
Watch It If You Can podcast. Join us for each episode as we create box sets of our favourite films and TV shows.
We go through the cast to see what else they've been in, along with any recommendations.
We pick our favourite characters, performances, moments and highlights from the soundtrack too.
We ask if there's anything to make it better and look at the lasting legacy of our pick.
We have a little fun with our quickfire round, and finally, what else would you like list based on themes from the episode.
Maybe, just maybe, you should watch it if you can.
What if they've already seen it?
Well, you can watch it again if you can.
The Murder Shelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised. Well, welcome to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. I have an announcement, so attention, everyone. I am going to once again be participating in Creators Row at CrimeCon Denver from September 5th to 7th, 2025. Woohoo! You can save 10% on your badge by using my code, all one word and all lowercase letters, Murder Shelf. So you just visit www.crimecon.com/CC25 to purchase your badge. We had an incredible time over the past 2 years at CrimeCon, chatting, hanging out, having a couple drinks, talking cases and book suggestions. And I think this year's event in Denver is going to be the best yet. So stay tuned for more details as they come out. Make sure you're subscribed. And I cannot wait to see my murder bookies in Denver. So today, I have a special interview for you today about a book I love. This is episode 122 on author Dawn M. Barclay's book, Vacations Can Be Murder, a true crime lover's travel guide. All right, how much fun is this? Dawn Barclay's book is perfect for me and very likely you. Name a true crime lover who hasn't considered visiting the actual sites where crimes took place. Every detective I have spoken to has confirmed that being on the ground changes their perspective on the case. So for instance, in this last book that we did on the Wise murder trial, Diane Marger Moore described how seeing the victim's tiny bedroom influenced how she would present the case to the jury. Earlier in this podcast, I discussed the book, The Trial of Lizzie Borden by Kara Robertson. I got to travel to Fall River, Massachusetts, spent 2 days at the Fall River Historical Society, met Chief Historian Michael Martins, and visited the Borden House, which is both a museum and a bed and breakfast. However, I had to do all the research, find the addresses, find the locations, all on my own. If Dawn Barclay had published her book before my trip, it would have been so much easier to organize, and it would have enhanced my experience significantly. So a bit about Dawn Barclay. Her previous publication, her book, Traveling Different, Vacation Strategies for Parents of the Anxious, the Inflexible, and the Neurodiverse, was published in 2022, winning several awards. This includes the Society of American Travel Writers Foundation's 2023 Lowell Thomas Gold Award, which is given by the travel industry's most experienced writers, publishers, and public relations experts in North America and beyond. She also received an honorable mention from the Society for Journalists and Authors, their 2023 Arlene Award, given to books or articles that have made a difference by inspiring positive action within a community, society, or the world. Dawn also won first place for the 2023 Maxi Award, which recognizes excellence in literature by independent and self-published authors in the category of inspirational and self-help books. This is a remarkable achievement, and it gives me joy to support my authors wholeheartedly. So let me welcome Dawn Barclay to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast.
Hey, how are you?
I am so happy to have you on the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. Thank you for doing this.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Well, I was so fascinated with your book. I think it is the perfect marriage between traveling and true crime.
That's what I was aiming for. That, and I throw in some paranormal. I throw in something for tombstone travelers. I'm trying to get under that entire dark tourism umbrella.
Well, I think you managed to do that. First, I've got to know, where did the idea come? I think it is long overdue, and I'm surprised there's not a million books already out, but they're not. Where did that come about?
Yeah, I seem to be able to find these books that haven't been created yet. I did it with a book on traveling with children with autism. I was shocked it hadn't been written, so I finally wrote that. It took me about 20 years to get around to writing it. And coming off the success of that, I was looking for more nonfiction ideas. I was in Minneapolis for BoucherCon, which is the World Mystery Convention, because I do write psychological thrillers and domestic suspense. And I took a true crime tour of Minneapolis and St. Paul, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I wondered to myself, are there any books that list all the true crime tours around the country? And so that was kind of the seed for this book, because that when I started researching it, and I thought, well, if they're going to want to go on the true crime tour, they probably want to know about the crimes. Maybe they want a refresher, or maybe they want to learn from the beginning. And then they probably want to know where to read more, because I can only create a snippet of each, to fit it into a book of less than 80,000 words. And then they probably want to know where to stay, so I can find hotels and restaurants that have a connection to true crime or justice. But then maybe there were people murdered and the souls were not at rest. And so I put in haunted restaurants and hotels. And then I added, well, if they're in town, they probably want to see any museums or attractions that have anything to do with true crime. So I put that in. And then people are going to want to know where the people are in jail, or where they were in jail. So let's tell the people where the jails are. And then where are the people buried? So I included that. Then I pulled everything together and created itineraries of each of the different parts of the states, so that it made sense to take snippets and go on 1 or 2 or 3 day tours.
Exactly. This is such a fabulous idea. And people in true crime do like to go to the places when they can. I'm going to the Hamptons Whodunit Wednesday, and we're going to Gilgo Beach to see about, Long Island serial killer sites, going past his house. I mean, we can't help ourselves. So I know this is a thing. And you included victim resources, which I thought was amazing.
Thank you. That came late. I was actually talking to someone about the book, and I had, there's a part of me that's like, wow, I'm sort of sensationalizing people's misery, which I don't like. I try to be extremely respectful in the book, but I was like, how can I sort of counter that? And I said, well, people need to know how to handle this stuff if it happens to them. I wouldn't necessarily know where to go if something happened to me. So that's how that came about.
But I think that's fantastic. A lot of people, even local people, may not be aware of all the resources in their areas.
I feel like you're already interested in crime. You probably want to know where to go if something happens to you. So that was a lot of work to put that in the back, but I was pleased. I hope it stays relevant.
Yeah. I commend you on thinking about the victims. You do hear that in true crime a lot, that people are trying to make money on other people's misery. And sometimes people seem to be running down that rabbit hole. And I do not. I pay for the podcast, and then anything I have left over gets donated to DNA Doe or something like that, because I don't want to ever be that kind of podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, to each his own. I think that's really important to pay attention that there are victims here. And you've done that really beautifully.
Yeah, I see it as history also. I don't really see it as sensationalism as much as remembering those people. They deserve to be remembered. And hopefully people are like thinking about how to avoid this sort of thing if it happens to them, you know?
Well, I think that is really what true crime is. I mean, like 85% of people who are into true crime are women. And I do think, I know I do, but I think we do have an eye to what if something did happen? What has worked and people have survived? What hasn't worked and people became victims? I think we do consider these kinds of things.
Well, that would definitely explain why it's popular, because nobody wants to get into any of these issues. And, you know, I'm always thinking what could happen because I write psychological thrillers and domestic suspense. So I'm always in any situation saying, how could this go wrong?
Right, exactly. I also thought you did a great job because, I mean, you can't go over every crime that's paid attention to in a state. So you've had to go through and pick that which is a blend of historic and things that happened a year ago.
Right. And I also have caveats in the introduction about how I'm sure I've left out your favorite serial killer or your favorite hotel or haunted restaurant. But the heart of the book is, where did these things happen? And I tried to find the exact addresses. In the case of private homes, I give you the block number. I don't give you the house number. But when it was apartment buildings, in the case of the Boston Strangler or businesses or whatever, I give you the apartment addresses. So you can actually go there. And when there were chase scenes, I sort of reroute and tell people what the route was of that chase scene so they could do it themselves. I think that's the fun of it for people. The key to me picking certain crimes was, were there places to tell people to go? Because you have the case of the preppy killer in Manhattan and Central Park, which is the next book, but I always use it as an example. If I tell you Central Park, I don't have the exact location in Central Park. So that's not going to be a really interesting story for you. So I left it out. But I will put in crimes where I can take you to the exact location, because that's the point of the book.
Thank you, because that makes it easier for the person who does want to go to the actual places. I've been to Central Park. I have no idea if I was anywhere near where the preppy killer murder took place. You know, I do want to be able to go to the places that I can go to. And thank you for protecting private homes.
Yeah, you're welcome. I felt very strongly that I did not want people gawking outside houses. And also, in the case of Boston defrocked priests, I did not list the churches, because to me, you go into a church either to pray, to hear a sermon, or you go to admire how beautiful it is. You don't go there because a crime happened there. So I left that out.
See, I think that you went about it very thoughtfully, very compassionately, and I can appreciate that.
Thanks.
True crime is never easy. I feel like I say too often, oh, this, you're going to have to brace yourself. This one's really tough. Well, they're all really tough. So you have to be thoughtful, respectful. I talk about ethical podcasting. Is just because I may have a pet theory on something doesn't mean I'm going to accuse anybody of murder or anything like that.
Sure.
You know what I did note? I thought this was wonderful. For example, in Connecticut, you were talking about the Hartford witch trials, something that I vaguely was aware of it as a history teacher. I vaguely remembered this, but everyone talked about Salem.
Right. They don't know that Hartford predated Salem.
Yes, exactly. By like 30 something years.
1647 to 1663. There were 43 trials, 16 executions. Many of them were in Hartford, 3 were in Wethersfield.
And no one talks about that. A million movies are made, a gazillion books out there. And that's what I mean by picking such fascinating choices.
Hartford had so much crime. I used to work Hartford when I was working for a limousine company in sales. And I didn't know all the stuff that went on in Hartford. But yeah, there's a lot of, that goes on quite a long time in the book, talking about Joseph Mad Dog Dvorsky, and you've got Matthew Stephen Johnson and the sex workers he killed. Armistead was
Yes.
handled. It was tried in Hartford at Hartford Distributors. You had Omar Thornton, who shot up his co-workers there, blaming racism, even though they denied that. So I don't know. I can't say whether that's true or not. You just have a ton of things. There was a woman who you probably have heard of called Bonnie Forshaw.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
So you know her story. That happened in Hartford, and Wally Lamb helped her write her story and helped her get out of jail. So that's a pretty well-known story, I think. And then Amy Orchard Gilligan, who In Old Lace is loosely based on, is out of Hartford too. So much stuff going on there.
That's what I mean. You've limited the number of cases that you're talking about, but you have a very good representation of them. Let me ask you, how did you go about eliminating some from your choices? Because you said there's an abundance.
There is. I mean, if I felt that I had something like it already, then I might leave it out and I would pick the more interesting one. In New York, when I was doing New York, there was so much crime. Again, that's the book that's coming out in August. That if you didn't kill 5 or 6 people, you were probably not in the book. I had to make tough choices. I had to cut out all of Western New York because there was so much crime just between like Albany and Long Island that I figured people will fly into New York and do day trips. They're not going to even go out west. And if I cover out west, I'll do it in my blog. I didn't have room for it in the book. So yeah, you have choices. There were the crimes that really interested me that were different. And I've talked about this before. There was a man named John Salvi who was a hairdressing student up in New Hampshire. And he was like a neo-Nazi, definitely had racist views to the point of extreme. And something triggered him. I think his hairdressing teacher told him he wasn't ready to cut hair, and something triggered him. And he went down and shot up a couple of Planned Parenthood centers, one in Brookline, a couple in Brookline.
Yeah.
And then he went down to Virginia and did it. And I think that's where they caught him there. The interesting part of this story and why it got into the book was that when he was shooting up the Planned Parenthood Center in Brookline, everybody sort of was running out. He was chasing women out of the waiting room. One of those women was a woman named Deborah Gaines, who went home and couldn't bring herself to go back. She had PTSD. She couldn't bring herself to go back to Planned Parenthood. She brought the child to term. She sued Planned Parenthood for wrongful life because she felt they should have had better protection. They settled out of court. I find that fascinating. So even though not a lot of people got killed in that story, and maybe it's not on a lot of people's radar, it interested me, so it got in the book.
Yeah, I remember reading that, and I had never heard of that. It's always wrongful death. Always.
Yeah. Right. I've never heard of wrongful life or
wrongful life. Yeah. And they settled out of court. Yeah. So
things like that got in the book. I mean, I read a tremendous amount. My bibliography is like over 500 entries. It's about 40 or 50 pages. So I did a lot of research. And when I couldn't get what I wanted out of books or law, case law, or just the internet, I would go and call historical societies because I couldn't find the exact addresses, and they researched and found them for me. So yeah, a lot of research.
You also have a section there that was really written just for me. You do have a section on true crime in this particular state. Now, this is New England. I want to talk about your next book. It was like manna. Thank you so much. I can now pick up these books. I'm always looking for suggestions. And after reading it, I trust your judgment. So I can't wait to actually start going through the list.
Yeah. And I tried to include even books that were covering things that I couldn't find room for in the book. So those book lists are pretty comprehensive about different crimes in the area.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to buy a copy of the book just for the book lists. Though I can assure you, I'm going to wear it out as I start planning little weekend journeys from here and there. Because I'm in Pennsylvania. I can make it to New England.
Okay, great. And Pennsylvania comes out in August. That was a pretty hefty chapter, too. I always saw this as a book both for people traveling through the area, maybe a road trip with older kids, or just RVing, whatever they're traveling through, but also locals who may not have known what was going on. I mean, I went to boarding school in Connecticut and I went to college in Massachusetts, and I never knew any of this stuff happened. And I would have kind of liked to have, because I would have, at least in college, I would have gone and visited some of the sites.
Yes, exactly. My daughter went to school in Rhode Island, and I had no idea. Absolutely no idea. You think I'm on the East Coast, I would have heard about this, that, or the other thing. And you refer to the Klaus von Bülow trial and the death of his wife, Sonny. And I had seen the movie that came out with Jeremy Irons. I know he was the villain, supposedly, or victim, depending on how you want to look at the case. But that's when I fell in love with Jeremy Irons.
Okay.
He doesn't necessarily come across as completely sympathetic in the movie, but again, interesting case. I didn't realize it was in Rhode Island.
Yeah, a lot of things. That was Newport, and a lot of things happened in Newport aside from that, too. Like you've got Doris Duke's story, which I thought was pretty interesting. And you've got this very rich woman, Carolyn Mary Skelly Burford, I hope I pronounced that right, whose maid ripped her off for $2.2 million in jewelry. And then the maid's husband sort of like saying, where did this jewelry come from? And she threw him out of the house.
Don't get in the way of my theft.
Yeah, just very, very interesting things. Newport was an interesting thing to cover.
Well, I've been up to Newport and did the mansion tour, and I can only, I mean, I was just absolutely engrossed in the majesty of some of those places. So now I have another layer that I can put right on top of that. And, you know, you mentioned this before. Can you imagine taking your teenagers? What'd you do at school today? Nothing. Can we cut down the screen time? Can you put your phone down and have a conversation? No. They can be very much like that. This, I think, would be engrossing. I mean, parents would love this.
Yeah, if their kids are interested in true crime at all, and just to take them to those spots, I think would be really interesting for them. I mean, I took my kids when they were young. I don't know if this says I'm a good parent or not. When they were pretty young, we went to the Mutter Museum in Pennsylvania, in Philly, which is very macabre. I mean, there are body parts in formaldehyde in bottles that you can look at. They loved it. They still talk about it. But then again, I got them front row seats to the show, The Book of Mormon. And that's very subversive too. So it might just be my kids.
Yes. We lived in New Jersey when my kids were growing up, and we did not go to the Mutter Museum. But now that they are grown, that was like one of the first places that we visited. And did we have a great time? Again, macabre. You're going to see some very oddities, human oddities, and fascinating though. So whatever kink we have, I think we share it.
And even though it didn't really fit into this book, into the next book, but it really isn't crime or justice or paranormal, I still included it because I just thought this audience would probably get a kick out of that museum.
Absolutely. Now, you've mentioned it a couple times. I know we're talking about your New England travel guide, but tell me about, what is it? What are you calling it? The Mid-Atlantic States? I mean,
Mid-Atlantic States. And it was supposed to be 6 states, and it ended up being 3 because between New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, there was so much crime, I couldn't fit the rest in. So they were bumped to a capital region edition that I'm working on now. And it's a much grittier book.
Yeah.
It is. There's cannibalism in a couple of different places in New York. There's infanticide. It's just rough. A lot of mass shootings in Pennsylvania. Every state seems to have its own sort of characteristics. Like Providence had a lot of mob hits.
Yes.
One after another in the book. It also had a lot of children getting hurt, which was very upsetting to me. A lot of child abuse. Vermont had a lot of cold cases. There's not a lot of crime in Vermont, and a lot of it hasn't been solved. So Vermont was better known for cold cases. New Hampshire was more surprising in how much there was in terms of crime. But, of these 6 states in New England, Massachusetts by far was the state with the most crime.
Oh, I did not know that. Well, it is like geographically larger, so that kind of makes sense. Just thinking, I think you do have more urban centers versus, Maine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it took me quite a long time to just write Boston up because it wasn't just the Boston Strangler and the bombings.
Yes.
There's so much more, but and interesting stuff like theft. There was the Brinks job. There was Charles Ponzi, who I found fascinating. There was the Isabella Gardner Museum theft. So a lot of stuff going on that way. But also in Boston, you had like the Craigslist killer. You had this guy called Kenneth Francis Harrison, who was the giggler, and he'd kill people and then he'd call up and giggle about it. Yep. And there's a certain amount of organized crime. There was also, which a lot of newspapers did not cover, in the late 70s, in the wake of desegregation, there was a lot of racial disharmony. And there were, I believe, I don't want to get it wrong, there were 11 Black women who were murdered. And the sad part of that is the very light coverage that was given to them by the newspapers. So I list all of them, and I also talk about a monument that had been created. I think it was a pop-up monument. I don't think it's still there, to commemorate those women, really to memorialize the women. So I talk about that because I think that wasn't very fair, how, they weren't really spoken about much.
We do talk about this in true crime, the, white girl syndrome, that if a white girl goes missing, it's all over the news. And if at the same time you have a Black girl that goes missing, the media goes silent. And I know we are taking efforts to turn that around so that there's more fairness, because people's broken hearts, regardless of skin color, the hearts are broken. You want to know what happened to your loved one.
Of course. So, yes, I tried to be very, very equalitarian. There's a word that I'm missing, and that's bad for a writer.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I can't think of the word I want, but I want to make sure that everybody gets help. If someone goes missing, the more eyes you have out there looking, the better chance you have of being able to locate someone. Is that simple?
Of course.
You also didn't shy away from very well-known cases, because I know you had the Pamela Smart story that went on in Derry, New Hampshire.
Yes.
Again, I've seen the movies, did not have any recollection of where these things actually took place.
Yeah. Derry, New Hampshire, the movie was To Die For with Nicole Kidman. And I still remember the ending where you have the woman ice skating. This, I guess, Ileana Douglas ice skating. That was a great movie. And so I did not also realize it was in New Hampshire, but it was interesting reading that she is serving a life sentence in Bedford Hills, New York, actually, which is not so far from where I live. And the accomplices, since you talked the teenage boys, the students, into helping her out, they've since been paroled or released, but she's still in jail.
There was just a big brouhaha about her. It's a life sentence without the possibility of parole. And she wants that changed, because she said, I didn't actually murder anybody, and I really would like to get out. And I just kind of smiled to myself, and I'm like, honey, you planned out. So did Charles Manson. He didn't actually murder anybody, but I don't think we were going to parole him anytime ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's not getting out.
No. I did have a case where somebody was in jail, up for parole, and then a lot of his students, because he was a teacher, came forward and talked about how they'd been abused by him when they were children. And so he got moved into a facility for the mentally insane because there was definite psychiatric problems there. And I believe every time he came up for parole, more and more students came forward to make sure that he would not get released.
Yeah, they have actually paroled serial killers. They have. There was the case, I've got to look up the names of the women, but it was two women who were working in a nursing home, and they decided to kill people as kind of a love pact or something. And one of them stood guard as the other one smothered patients, and they were caught. They were both convicted. Kathy Wood, and I can't remember the other woman's name. And one got parole. I'm not quite sure what the parole board was thinking there, because there was like 5 victims.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of murders that I have 2 or 3 instances where people in senior centers or in old age homes or nursing homes are murdered, not only by these nurses and male and female nurses who like to be angels of death and bring them to death and revive them and let them die, but just figure that they were easy marks. There was one guy, and I think this is in the New York book, who went in and raped these older women and then murdered them so they wouldn't talk. And took a while before they found him.
Takes a while to figure out what's exactly going on. But talk about the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, the victimology it's heartbreaking. Anyone who goes after children or older people, you know, or anybody who's not able to really fight back.
Yeah.
It's
whenever I had to cover anything with dogs or children, I'd get very, very upset.
They're the hardest books that I do.
And because I cover the where the people are buried, sometimes I see the pictures of the children as well, and that's heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah. I always walk a fine balance between showing the victims, you know, photographs if I can find them and get permission to use them, versus not, because I don't want to exploit their pictures. This is the essence of their person that they are. Nor do I want to upset the family if they happen to stumble onto something. But at the same time, I really want to focus on the victims, even though I'm going to speak on the perpetrator and what possessed this person. I always try to explain the whys as best I'm able.
Uh-huh. What I have found with reading these people's history is a lot of the mass murderers had just awful childhoods where they were beaten, they were abused. Their parents a lot of times were drug addicts or alcoholics. They definitely did not have, you know, very sweet, happy childhood. And I think they were at a loss for what to do. They were definitely injured, mentally traumatized.
I look at them very much as being victims of child abuse. And I can really sympathize with those children as well. I cannot sympathize with the choices that the adult version inflicted upon people in society. But I have enough empathy that I can feel for a child who was not taken care of, who didn't experience love. Belittling seems to be an important component in a lot of these people who grow to be perpetrators. It's being researched.
You're aggrandizing yourself and making yourself more powerful and bigger. So that would make sense to me.
Well, what the control freak seizes control that they did not have over their lives as children. And that makes sense to me. Even now, healthy adults will be control freaks, you know, will develop OCD in wanting to control as much of their environment around them for security and emotional needs. Yeah, there's therapies for that do help. I understand that. And it's really unfortunate. It's more than unfortunate. It's really tragic. I have to say, I live near Pennsylvania, and I'm wondering if you've ever been to Eastern State Penitentiary.
Yes, about a year ago, I was coming out of a writer's retreat, and I took my friend Elf, and the two of us did the tour, the self-guided tour. And I found that fascinating. What an amazing place that is. And just to hear what it was, how the people were in total solitary confinement in these tiny cells with these thick walls. And it's people who were, the guards wore socks. They didn't wear shoes, or they wore something over their feet so the people in the cells couldn't even hear the footsteps. And they got like a little tiny bit of light from a hole in the ceiling that let light in. I mean, it was extreme, and it took them a long, long time to get privileges where they could interact with each other, and it came into the 20th century. And then they had a little story of a dog. They had a PR thing going on because the mob was kind of running the penitentiary for a while in the later years, and they needed some good PR, so they had this lab, this black lab. I don't remember the lab's name, but they said that he had done something to the mayor's cat, and so now he was jailed in the prison, and it was very therapeutic for those inmates because it was always great to have a dog around. So that dog was very popular with the inmates, but they try to do a whole PR thing around it.
Oh, I did not know that. It's Eastern State. It's one of the first places that I visited when I moved to Pennsylvania. Listen, the history of the place is fascinating. The structure, it's like a hub of a wheel, and then you had the wings that kind of went off that. Walking down these, it's almost like a tunnel.
Yeah.
The center area has a very high ceiling, but these tunnels, these spokes that lead into that hub are just oppressive. There's the word I wanted. Listen, it met the theory of what prison should be, certainly at that time. No question about it. And didn't it last? I think it lasted into the 1960s or 70s.
I believe so. And there were people who were thrown in there for a year or two just for stealing a horse.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not limited to like you had to murder somebody to get in.
They were renovating and restoring the medical section when I was there last. And it was just appalling. I mean, there's just no way around it. The conditions were terrible. But the upside is at Halloween, they do the terror behind the walls. It is absolutely wonderful. They have the Al Capone speakeasy set up where you can go and have a couple cocktails. And it is absolutely one of the most wonderful Halloween romps ever.
That's very cool. And people don't realize also that I think it was the first prison to have a synagogue. And that synagogue is still there and you can visit it. So yeah, a lot of interesting things I didn't expect when I visited, and I'm very glad. And that's definitely one of the sites that's listed in the Pennsylvania book.
Oh, that's good. That's absolutely wonderful. It's quite the place. I'm so glad it's going to be in the next book, which I can't wait to hear more about. You said the next book is coming out in August?
August, yeah. It's written, it's at the publisher. So hopefully a pre-order will come out soon. But it's, like I said, a grittier book. I think it might even be a little thicker. I mean, this book is 438 pages. I think the New York book might be a little bit longer. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Mid-Atlantic states.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to that. I'm definitely going to pre-order my copy. I mean, this is where I live. I mean, I can do this on an easy weekend. I really can't wait. It's such a wonderful resource. Yeah, it's been so comprehensive. And thank you for including the haunted hotel and haunted museum. And I mean, that's just so much fun. Ghost tours. Who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, ghost tours and true crime tours. And there are places, I think, in Boston where you can go with a retired detective in the back of his car and he'll take you on a private tour. Lots of different kinds of tours. I was glad to be able to. And whenever I'm in town, like I was in Nashville for a couple of conferences last year, and I took the true crime tour. I'm going to some conferences this coming, where am I going? I'm going to St. Pete for one, and I probably do one in New Orleans. I have to go to BoucherCon in New Orleans in September, so I'll probably take a true crime tour there. There are plenty of them.
I've done the true crime tour in New Orleans. You are going to have a marvelous, marvelous experience.
Good.
Do a cemetery tour.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
The way the geography is, that is so unique. I know it's a cemetery, but it's just a great experience.
Yeah, the only cemetery tour I've done was in Buenos Aires, and that's where there's a very famous cemetery where Evita has her crypt or whatever. And so that was a very interesting cemetery. And I'm sure if I do an international book, I'll include that.
Oh my gosh, you're going to be writing these books for a long time.
It's okay.
And then the updates, Volume 2, New England.
Let's not even talk about the updates. I think that'll be blog. That'll be on the blog because I'm so busy writing the books. It takes me 6 months to write each book. And it's not the only thing I'm writing at the same time. So
I want to ask you too, do you have to write something else, kind of like a palate cleanser in between?
I don't have to. I like to. I like to keep busy. I mean, I do editing of individual authors' books, and I do some editing for a publisher. But I also edit crime anthologies from other authors. So I've got one coming out again in August. August is going to be a big month for me. It's the first of a 2-volume anthology called Better Off Dead, crime fiction inspired by the music of Elton John and Bernie Taupin. And December, I do not have a story of my own in there, but I do have one in the next one that's going to come out in 2026 that I'm editing now. And that's called You Got Trouble, crime fiction inspired by Broadway show tunes.
That's wonderful. What a wonderful marriage. I love that.
Yeah. So the writers take the titles, not necessarily anything to do with the show or the song. We don't include lyrics, but they take the title as a prompt. They go in a whole different direction with it, and it's really fun.
That is really such a great idea. That does sound like fun. I do need to read something in between my true crime books, and true crime fiction is perfect.
Yeah. And I have to write fiction. I try to get in and write at least one fiction book a year. So I had one come out in January called Deadly When Disturbed, which is an updated take on single white female. So I really like writing fiction. I'm just trying to scramble for time to do it.
Yes, I need minions. I bet you do too. I just need minions to come in and just take care of all this little stuff so I can just do the guts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dawn, is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up?
Just a couple of things. If people want to ask their libraries to stock the books so other people can read them, they're available on Ingram, so the libraries can order them. And I'm fine with that. I think that would be great so that everybody can get their hands on them. But also, if you said you had some listeners who travel for true crime, and if they'd like to contact me, I'll feature them on my blog. I'm happy to talk to them about where they've gone and what they've enjoyed. And I think that's really a nice thing to add to the books, to put the blog out that talks about people's real travels.
Oh my God, that is such a great idea. How cool is that? How should they contact you?
2 R's. You can put my email address in the show notes, but also if they go to my blog, which is barsinister.substack.com with 2 R's, there's a way to contact me. If they go to my website, which is either vacationscanbemurder.com or my fiction website is dmbar with 2 R's.com, there's always ways to get a hold of me.
I will absolutely make sure I put all of that on my blog, where I put all of my, show notes and resources and photographs and everything else.
Great.
Awesome. Well, Dawn, thank you so much for doing this and talking about your fabulous book. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I really appreciate you.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
This has been so much fun. I feel very, very blessed. This has been great.
You have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Well, Murder Bookies, I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dawn Barclay. I get to talk with the most fascinating people. I thought she was gracious and knowledgeable and intelligent and fun. And now you are aware of a new resource for every true crime lover, a full guide to true crime travel adventures, this time in New England, with Mid-Atlantic states coming out in August. I encourage you to pick up the book. It is an interesting read. And like Dawn said, locals, you're going to love it, because I'm not aware of everything that went on in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, so I can't wait for the new book. Now be sure to follow up with Dawn. Send her your true crime travel stories. Specifically, Jennifer, you came to mind. I know we've talked about that previously. I will have all of her contact information on my blog and in the show notes in the episode description. So share with her your stories. Hey, you'll be featured on her blog. How cool is that? Thank you for listening. I see you as you hear me. Don't forget to use my code, MurderShelf, one word, lowercase letters, when you buy your CrimeCon Denver badge, and save yourself 10%. Now, coming up next, our new Patreon selected book, The Five, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. Now, as I mentioned, honoring the victims is an important part of my podcast. And Hallie Rubenhold's acclaimed book is an accurate tribute to the victims of Jack the Ripper. It is time to set the record straight on this notorious case. Now, Jack the Ripper is often viewed as this mythical figure who terrorizes Whitechapel, London in 1888, and his victims, Mary Ann Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Liz Stride, and Catherine Kate Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, deserve to have their stories told beyond being labeled as prostitutes and victims. These women came from diverse backgrounds across London, Wales, and beyond. They were writers, coffee house owners, and more, challenging that one-dimensional narrative. Hallie Rubenhold's gripping account gives them back their voice. And I'll kick off this series right after this interview drops. And please subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you for listening. Always trust your gut. Now, some of you have asked how you can help me grow the podcast. So introduce your friends and families. Host an episode party where you can listen and discuss at home. Because this is a book club after all. As always, my resources, crime scene photos, maps, recipes, drink selections, where to buy the books, they're on my blog at www.murdershelfbookclub.com, May 2025. You can contact me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com, or you can find me on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. See you soon, Murder Bookies. Stay safe.
Discover the transformative world of hypnosis and how it can lead you to a happier, healthier you. I'm Cindy Brainerd, a certified hypnotherapist from the Hypno Wellness Podcast, and your guide to finding wellness through the power of hypnosis. Join us every Wednesday for insightful topics and Thursdays for empowering hypnosis sessions. Remember, Hypno Wellness, your path to a better you.
Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved. Music, The Pewter Elephant by Blue Dot Sessions.